Good morning, everyone. This is Ron. Saturday morning. Go ahead and get started with our session. Uh, let's see if I can. You guys know I'm not the best at recapping things, but we had an interesting evening last Monday. We started off with questions, and then Pastor answering questions kind of took us on a little journey that was very enlightening, and that something that I hope to continue with or kind of expand on a little bit today. Uh, Part of what we discussed, I remember one of the things that came up was uh, being a creator, uh, co-creators. We always say we're co-creators, and he talked about we are creators, we're not co-creators, and with there being saying that I'm a co-creator it even speaks of separation, you know. But so we talked about being a creator versus a co-creator. I remember that part of it. And another part of what we discussed Monday, I thought really was very enlightening, was the relationship between spirituality, relationship between spirituality and history. So why those two things are important, that they are together. We talked about uh, going through things. I think Mary had a question about us going through things. I don't remember her exact question, but just a couple of things that we talked about that may you guys mute your phones, please. But those are a couple of things that we discussed, and a lot more stuff was talked about. But just a couple of things that I remember that may help us get going this morning here. Okay, so is there anyone else remember anything from the recap that you may have a question about, or something that came to you during the course of the week that we discussed? Anybody? Is there anything that may have come to you during the course of the week or outside of this discussion? Anything else that may have grabbed your attention?
Ron, this is Evelyn. I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
They talk about how the dollar is decreasing or has decreased.
Uh-huh.
How does money is considered as currency? How does money and water coincide? Because the water has currents, right? And another question is, how do they coincide?
Hey, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. Good morning. I might be able to help with that. So money has to flow through the system in order for that system to be healthy, in the same way that water has to circulate and flow through a system for that system to be healthy. And when it does not flow, when it gets like you could picture like a stagnant river or like a water that pools and doesn't move, it becomes sick. When water doesn't move, that's when you get like all kinds of sort of things growing and potentially choking it, that water flow. When money doesn't move, that's when you start to see the various forms of inequality that can threaten the stability of a society form. So it's similar in that way. It's kind of like blood flowing throughout your body. The blood has to circulate throughout all parts of the body. If it pools in one area of your body, it is dangerous for the health of the body overall. And it's that same concept with money as it moves through our society or doesn't move because of essentially the inequality in the way that it is hoarded by certain groups of people. Thank you. I hope that helped.
I guess. Thanks, Nick. Yeah, I guess my answer was kind of on the same grounds, and you've made it a lot more clear. I think both of them has I see both of them as a flow of energy. Uh, Currency, money being currency that keeps the economy going, keeps the world going, and the water, of course, being energy. That was I had not thought about it until she asked the question. I think it's a good question, but thank you for your answer. Pastor, did you have some insight?
No, I was actually headed exactly where Nick went. I began with talking about it flows. So
Yeah.
I honestly think that's just it. Nick's explanation of it. I don't see a simpler way to explain it. All right.
Miss Evelyn, does that help?
Yes, I'll just thank all three of you. That I appreciate that. Yeah, that was good. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate your question. Anyone else?
Good morning, everyone. I hope this can contribute to Reverend Richard and I believe it was Nick's answer. Water means life. And this is why when you see a picture of Mother Teresa, she has a shade of blue on because blue also means life. And as it relates to money, it really goes back to the individual of their interpretation of money that gives it life. If money defines me, then it's also safe to say that money will confine me. So one of the things I try to do, I try to give money my own interpretation as it relates to life. So it really goes back to the individual of their mindset of how they view life and how they can contribute to life with money or without money. Thank you.
Thank you, George.
Question.
Okay.
When you say money is life, what does that mean?
I'm not really saying money is life, Reverend Richard. I'm saying the person that has the money is already life in their interpretation of how they're going to enhance life could come by way of money. And I just reiterated, it goes back to the individual's mind state of how they view life. Can you enjoy life without money? Of course you can. Can you enjoy life with money? Of course you can. It just goes back to the individual of their mind state of how they view life. And if, being that we live in a capitalistic society, in some aspects, money does not give life. However, it is a tool for life. And that's the best I can answer right there, Rev, at this time.
Okay, I understand where you were coming from. Money also takes away life. Money is not the unripened thing or the evil thing. The attitude about it is what gives it a life of evilness, or it gives it a life of rightness, depending on attitude, as you said, George. Money in our society is controlled for the purpose of controlling. And there are those who have given money a bad rap. Money is life itself, but money does not determine its journey. We determine the journey of money. money, and when I say money has been given a bad rap, um, there are people who believe or use the excuse that money is all you want is money when there's not necessarily truth. You cannot look at people's property, the way they dress, the places they dine. You cannot look at that as someone who loves money. The only person who has, people who have an unripened attitude towards money, that is, they are not visible simply by you walking past them, is what I'm trying to say. So it is not the person as the physical being, it is the spiritual essence that has been squashed or is being used in the wrong way, which means that it's giving a life to the money that's in their possession that is unhealthy, that is ruthless. But that same amount of money in the hands of someone who knows who they are become a benefit for more people than you could ever dream of. It begins to benefit everyone around the one who possesses it because of that attitude. I say what I say because I don't want us to think that it's sinful or is wrong or unripened to have money. It's what you do with it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. If I could add one more thing to that, I definitely agree. And we all know the phrase "money is the root of all evil." That phrase that is incorrect, as Pastor Richard just said. What money allows you to do is satisfy all of the egotistical desires that you may not have realized you had when you sort of, come into a lot of money unexpectedly, for example. But the point is, it's you and not it, because it is just an extension of you. And it's interesting that we're talking about it now, because if you've been watching the news about the situation with a lot of banks in America currently, or potentially a lot of banks in America currently, that situation is very similar to something that happened in 2008, when the so-called Great Recession basically started. And I just bring that up because there's another thing happening that also happened. I think it was 2008, which was the writer strike in Hollywood. That is happening now again. So those two things, I believe, are sort of an interesting repeating pattern that we can see as it relates to how our economic system needs to change. And if it doesn't, then it goes through these same cycles or same patterns of, you can call them recession or whatever, but it doesn't have to do that. But it will do that as long as the money does not flow properly, as we've been talking about. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. The idea, the scripture, Nick, that we have quoted as money is the root of all evil, the Aramaic essence of that is speaking to the person, that money is the root. Why? Because if you have money, a windfall of money unexpectedly, out of that grows your attitude that you've always had. It becomes the root of your evilness or unripeness because you use it for those purposes. Money, the root of all evil. The all should not be there because it's not there in the original text. What's there in the original text is that money is the root of evil, or it can also be translated as money can become the root, or money becomes the root of all evil. And the becoming of it is based upon, as you said, your attitude. So, because this is an outgrowth of your egotistical attitude, that's in the vein that it was written in the Aramaic. There are so many things in the scriptures. Hello? Yes? There are so many things in the scripture that words are added to that throws us completely off. And at some point, I want to make mention of a few of them because, well, let me do this. One of them is resurrection. That's misinterpreted just as the misinterpretation of the root. All evil. Resurrection is a pause in life. Resurrection is not, and death is a doorway to life, but resurrection is a pause in life. And but we see it as simply coming back to life. So those kinds of things are misinterpretations in the scripture. The sheep, my sheep know my name, hear my voice, and they know me. And all Jesus is saying is that they are guided by me, and they belong to a boom. Those kinds of things seem simple, but they pull us off course. And how many times have we read something and we look up the words to get an understanding of them? What do we find? What we find is that the understanding that we're seeking is difficult to reconcile with what we have been taught because they are so different. And I want us to keep that in mind as we go forward because Nick is absolutely right in that it is not all evil. It's the root out of which that unripened attitude grows. But it does not make you evil. It does not create that attitude. That attitude is already there. It simply gives you the strength, for lack of a better term, to do what you have been wanting to do all the time. You just didn't have the means to do it. Thank you.
I guess I'm agreeing with what you guys have said, but I also want to talk about the energy attached to it. That energy has a direct bearing on how people view religion, and the sight that it gives people, meaning money is held up or as a reward for knowing God. It is held up as a reward for making it in the world. So that status, that part of it, is what make people do what they do and strive to obtain it, even if you have to fake it, you know. So that energy portion of it is probably more dangerous from the side of looking at religion than anything else that is attached to it. So I guess I don't know. I might be saying the same thing you guys have said, but anyway, just a thought. I had a thought. I can't remember where I'm going with it now.
Even if it is the same thing, it's okay because people hear differently, and that's why we go over things so many times. Religion and money don't really mix. What it does is manipulate. If I can't manipulate you with the scriptures to get your money, then I'm going to tell you that without the scriptures, you can't have money. And that ends up steering the sheep for the benefit of the one who is manipulating them. I remember hearing people as I grew up, older people say, if you want to know the true person, let them. They used to say, come into some money that they were not expecting, and that will bring out their true nature. Money doesn't change anyone. Money can change circumstances. Money doesn't change you. Money brings out who you are. And most of us, well, not all of us, but most of us that I know about have had gone around with not having, or I'm not going to say not having, but going through struggles, and put it that way. And struggles will do one or two things with you. Struggles are going to make you stronger and dig and be more entrenched in what you believe, or struggles are going to cause you to do things that you thought you would never do in order to end your struggle. So I rest my case with money by simply saying that money does not change you. You change the way you use money. You change money itself to be what you want it to be. Thank you.
Well, one aspect that I think we all know of as it relates to religion and money, Monique and I live in the inner city of Spartanburg, and we deal with our fair share of Jehovah's Witnesses and the Latter-day Saints, or more, I usually call them morons, but it's really Mormons. And if their interpretation is, I don't have a relationship with the Creator based on the neighborhood I live in, that's all religion. With the Mormons, when they used to stop by, I would be cordial to them. Yet from a historical aspect, one of the founding fathers of the Mormons didn't care for blacks, didn't care for Native Americans, didn't even care for his own female. So I would just engage them. Why would I even entertain you when this is your foundational piece? So the whole aspect of money, get to know a person. If you going by imagery, you could really be in for a rude awakening. First Baptist Church is better than Greater New Faith. Well, the building may be better. They may have a gymnasium, yet the teaching could be different. Is Wofford College better than South Carolina State? Building-wise and landscape-wise, I would say yes. Yet when you start gauging professors, and what they're teaching, that's when you really get at the meat and potatoes of things. So the whole energy of money is, some people view money as you have a better relationship with the creator or God, when that's really not the case. So money, as Reverend Richard said and Nick said, and I said in the beginning, it's your energy of how the energy you want to have with that money to give it an interpretation. Thank you.
Thank you. If I could, yeah, I totally agree. And I just wanted to add that the reason that we in general, make having money or physical wealth equivalent to having a good relationship with the creator, is due to the complete lack of spiritual anything within the context of sort of modern religion and within the context of essentially capitalism, because modern Christianity is a subsidiary of modern capitalism. And because that mentality and that mindset does not know how to interface with reality in the spiritual sense, using the spiritual faculties that we all possess, the next best thing that they assume to be true, the next best thing they rely on is what your physical situation is, which is why that, underlying all of these sort of conservative mega billionaire religious types is the idea that as evidence of them being righteous, they are rich. And this is basically a complete inversion of reality, but it's due to their spiritual disconnection from self, from other people, and from the reality of what connects us all, and ability to draw from that connection. So it goes back to the founding of America, this idea, and before that, of course, that if you're doing well in life, it is somehow, well, if you're doing well physically, materially, monetarily during life, it is somehow proof that you are going to heaven, is exactly what it is. And this is completely incorrect, wrapped within layers of ignorance concerning the spiritual nature of reality. Thank you.
Nick, I would invert what you said also. You said that as evidence of being, they perceive that evidence of being righteous is being rich. If you invert that evidence of being rich as being righteous, that's a misconception also. But all you have to do is look at our ex-president as evidence of being rich. There's no way I can do what I want, how I want it, when I want it, to whom I want it. And no one should be able to touch me because I'm famous and I'm rich, kind of thing. So that works both ways is what I want to say.
Well, and also when the rich young ruler came to Jesus and said he wanted to be righteous, what did Jesus tell him? Sell off all your stuff and then live the life. So that is a real misconception that riches are related to you going to heaven. Anyway, thanks.
Yeah, there's many cherry-picked, as the saying goes, things from the Old Testament and the New Testament that are used to justify all of these mindsets. Like you can read the line where it says it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to get in heaven. The billionaire hosting the give all sort of praise and loyalty to Israel lunch for Congress people or whatever has read that line, but it does not connect because, of course, the physical experience of being rich overrides any sort of desire to more deeply understand anything. So, of course, if you're rich, oh, that can't be true. That's obviously this is a good thing, and this is a good thing, which means I'm good, and that means I'm going to heaven. And there's many ways in which you can delude yourself about the various things that are in the Bible. And as I was saying, they pick and choose what they like and don't like. That same line, well, in the Old Testament anyway, that same line that they all use to condemn homosexuality, for example, is right next to a bunch of stuff saying it's also wrong for you to eat shellfish, for example. How many of them, how many people going directly to Red Lobster after church? Like, there are very many things that you can ignore if you are more focused on your physical experience than it is your sort of spiritual connection to anything and everything. Anyway, thank you.
That is so real. Never thought about it that way, but when you mention that, what came to me is this: when Jesus said, "The good shepherd laid down his life for his sheep," that doesn't mean it has nothing to do with dying or being killed for the sheep. What Jesus said is the good shepherd is a mirror for the sheep. It's a mistranslation of that whole section of Scripture. Laying down your life, you become a mirror. And if you are a mirror for the sheep, then you do those things that you ask the sheep to do, or you teach the sheep about doing. The life, laying down that life, is saying that Jesus saying that I have given my whole life to be a mirror to the sheep. So when you talk about the first thing you do is go to Red Lobster, which when they said something differently during the message, then that in itself is not the mirror for the sheep that is healthy. It is a mirror for the sheep that says you can do anything you want to do and talk to people anyway, and as long as you come to church next Sunday. That's the crazy part to me. Thank you.
I remember reading some time ago, back when we were buying up 100 books and reading a lot. So I remember reading something that one of the sages says, everything that happens to you is designed, or everything you go through is designed to bring you closer to the Creator. And so all the things that happens in our lives may in some way cause us to hopefully internalize it yourself, go inside and look at you and say, hey, okay, why did this happen, or what am I to learn from this, kind of thing, I guess. And it is one of the things that got us going last week. I can't remember if it was Kathy or Mary that asked the question about things we go through and some of the challenges in life. And I remember us talking about the things that I go through, or Pastor goes through, or Mary goes through. All of it's designed for you based on your experiences, so that you can see who you are. Because seeing who I am may not necessarily change you. So I just kind of contrast that to what we've been talking about when we talk about wealthy people. What do they go through that they can't pay for or change the circumstances, whether it's paying somebody else to do something? That is a difference. looking at it from a religious perspective, it fits. But from a spiritual perspective and a search for truth, it doesn't come close to fitting, because at some point you have to go to yourself. You can run as hard as you can, but you can't run from yourself. The truth eventually brings you back to you, regardless of everything that you've surrounded yourself with. So that to me is kind of the difference. Kind of where we started last Monday. We were talking about this.
So Ron, I have a question. As far as us hearing about these banks collapsing, I think it's something that we should pay attention to, but as far as us being concerned about it, it's out of our control, right? What's happening with the bank?
Yeah, I look at things this way, that there are humanitarian things that get my attention. That I saw something the other day. This little girl's mom was shot, and hearing the 911 call, hearing an 8-year-old on the phone talking to an operator, brought tears to me, and those kind of things wear me out. But something like a bank, something like that, to me, I won't say I'm not concerned, but I see those things as necessary based on what we've asked for and what's going on. I think everything is being uprooted. I think everything is being turned over, so to speak, so that it can be observed from a different place. And as Nick said, this happened before, almost identically to 2008 or so. So we're seeing it again. And if anything, my question is, okay, what are we to see here? What do we look for? But I don't always kind of let things bother me or upset me or even take notice to them like I used to. But someone else may see that differently. So Pastor and Nick or anybody else that want to address her question.
Nick, you want to say something? Because I'll touch that also.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Can you restate the question, actually?
I said, with the banks collapsing and everything, I know it's something that we should, it's really not, my question is, should we be concerned about it? Because I know it's out of our control, what's happening now with the banks collapsing. And then with Ron making the statement he said about there's something in here, the lesson in everything that we see, things are being uprooted, it's necessary. That's my question.
Thank you. To that, I would say, to some extent, it is under our influence. And if not our direct control, then certainly our influence. But no, we don't have to be worried about it. These are what we would have to be worried about is any thing potentially distracting us from remaining aware of what is going on behind the scenes, so to speak. So any potential sort of issues with the economy in the United States that affects everybody is always a period wherein certain spiritual seeds can be planted. And that would be our main concern. And obviously I can't say for sure what's going to happen, but that is the direction it looks like we're headed in. So it doesn't have to be the same as the 2008 period. But I think things like this are just going to keep happening due to the nature. And it's coming to a head in a sense with the sort of closing out of the generation of people in the United States who want this kind of economic system to continue forever. It's not going to, obviously, but the way in which we make our transition is very much up to all of us. Thank you.
I agree with everything you said. We are indeed strong influence on what's happening, just as we are on anything else that's happening. And when you look at what's happening with the system, the financial system, if you look at it close enough, you will see that it's also an illusion. There's nothing real about it, because although we talk about living in a capitalist society, we actually live in a society that's controlled by oligarchs. If we were living in a capitalist society, it would be virtually impossible for there to be in existence the number of billionaires, multi-billionaires, because in the capitalist system, you truly don't play games with the finances. Bankruptcy means bankruptcy. General Motors would be out of business. So would Chrysler. So we live in a capitalist society, and capitalism is forced on those who don't have the means to fight back. Socialism is what the rest of the wealthy enjoys, and that socialism is seen in all the breaks they get, tax breaks they get, supposedly based upon the benefits that they are offering to society when they really aren't. And looking at the banking system, it is impossible for the banking system to be completely destroyed. Why? Because when you print the money, when you are the one who controls the value of all currency in the world, how can you go bankrupt? When this whole thing about the debt ceiling is actually an exercise in manipulation and politics to keep people on edge. Why do I say that? If there's a problem with a debt ceiling, there are several things that need to be taken into consideration. Number one, the debt ceiling issue should have been embedded in this country from the beginning of this country. But it wasn't. Yet every year there is an increase in the money that it takes to operate the government, basically the money that contractors are paid to function on behalf of the government. If a budget is passed and you exceed that budget, raising the debt ceiling is not going to fix that budget. If the debt ceiling was real, then why is it that it did not come into existence until 1939? It came into existence in 1939 because of politics. One party blaming the other of spending too much money. And since 1939, it has bounced back and forth between the parties. If the debt ceiling, if you're $1 trillion in debt and you print the money and you control the value of it, then you really are not going bankrupt. This Moody rating, all of these things are illusions, and the illusions that have been sold to the society, to the world, the global existence of economies is coming to an end. As Nick said, that this system of finances is on the verge, not of collapse in the sense of economic collapse, but is on the verge of being changed in such a manner that it is going to benefit everyone as opposed to benefiting just a handful of people. This whole idea about creating space where people are hurting because of finances is to keep people on edge and to make them feel like at some point they're going to be wealthy as well, as opposed to being truthful and understanding that that the reason for all of this, including sports, is to keep people from paying any attention to what's real, the reality of this government, the reality of the world climate, the reality that, for example, that just with Russia and Ukraine, this is a proxy war to keep Eastern Europeans from forming an alliance that they had under the Soviet Union, because Western Europe didn't want anything to do with Eastern Europeans. And they just don't want that alliance to resurface because it gave them problems. It gave NATO nations problems with trying to control everything. Am I saying that Putin is doing the right thing? No, I'm not. I'm saying that everything that can be shaken is being shaken. And even though the society see this as a material shaking, it really isn't. It is a spiritual shaking that's taking place worldwide. Think about how long U.S. was in Afghanistan when it was Saudi people from Saudi Arabia mainly who crashed the planes. And think about how long this country was in Vietnam because it was pissed off with who they voted. This country, after France left, says to the Vietnamese, choose your leader. And my word's not theirs, but choose your leader. And they put up a candidate, they meaning the U.S. did, and the candidate lost. And the candidate who won, America did not want that candidate in place, so they came up with this idea of justifying controlling that nation. And we know what the history of that, what the end result of that. So all of these things are being shaken. We talked about exposing stuff. That's been done. It's time now for the shaking to take place so that all of the wheat be separated from the tare. It's time for that to happen, and we can see it if we look closely at the state of South Carolina and how things are happening in South Carolina. When we see how things are taking place in South Carolina, why is it that South Carolina is having such a problem in passing an anti-abortion bill? Just like everything that that presents itself as evil, especially to people of color, South Carolina led the line. Session papers written in Union, South Carolina. The draft for the session paper, rather, written in Union, South Carolina. When people want to know how to handle their slaves, they came to South Carolina. South Africans came to South Carolina to be schooled on how to control the black folk, the Africans. All of these things, but yet South Carolina cannot seemingly get a bill passed. The first one that they passed was shot down by the Supreme Court, state Supreme Court. Well, the state Supreme Court, the Chief Justice is John Beatty, a black man from Spartanburg. And the females on that court, they joined with him and one other judge, two others, whatever it was, and said that it was unconstitutional. They have not been able to move forward with that yet. Why? Because things are being shaken. And when systems are shaken, everything that is anti-people falls out of that system. And the system is revitalized for the benefit of humanity. Because there are shepherds in the earth who are protecting the sheep. There are shepherds in the earth who are willing to be a mirror, to lay down their life for the sheep, knowing that they can be not only ostracized, but physically killed in the process of doing it. It doesn't matter, because death is simply a doorway to life itself, and that life itself is a resurrected life. Lazarus was not resurrected. Lazarus, the words that Jesus spoke to Lazarus was, be created. In other words, the words that Jesus literally spoke to Lazarus was, create yourself. It is a different word than what is used in the resurrection of Jesus. There are two different things. That gateway to death leads to a pause in life. That pause in your life is the opportunity for you to see righteousness. And when you see it, to the extent that Jesus was able to see it, then we are truly resurrected. But everything that blinds us must first be crucified, with no chance of being resurrected in us. Lazarus was not resurrected because Lazarus' life was not altered when he recreated himself. They took the life, put the life back into that body that he was occupying. He was not able to do what Jesus was doing when he was resurrected, because there are two totally different events. Totally different. No comparison between the two. Now, for those who are searching for truth, with your genuine desires, you have died to self. Dying to self means that you exit the door of self and you enter the door of death, where your life can be resurrected. And during this period of study, during this period of making every effort to understand, resurrection is taking place. Resurrection is taking place Why do I say resurrection is taking place? Because the crucifixion of religion and all the other isms in us have taken place, and in some of us they are taking place. And if they are taking place, then you are not dead to self yet. You're in the process of it. However, being resurrected means that if it means that it has changed the course of your life, it doesn't mean that you don't make mistakes. It doesn't mean that some of your thinking doesn't revert to where it was. It doesn't mean that at all. It means that you know how to deal with it if it does. When Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane, this is an example of, regardless of who you are, you still have issues approaching this resurrection thing. And even when Jesus was resurrected and all the things that happened, all Jesus was saying or showing us is that during the course of your resurrection, your journey would carry you many places. And in the places where your journey carry you, you will be in the midst of people who see you as a human being. But once you start talking, their eye will be open, and they will see you as the one who has been crucified. What that means is they will see that you are not the average human. You're not the human who's guided by his eyes. You're not the human who's caught up in a material world. You are a human. You are a human who is a human being as you were created to be. And it's at that point that others began to talk about your resurrection, talk about who you are. Even when Jesus was unrecognizable momentarily by those who had walked with him, this is not telling us that the physical attributes are something different as much as it's telling us that he said he became totally different than what he was. And Jesus ended at the cross by saying, this is finished. That doesn't mean that you put a period behind that. That means in the Aramaic, being finished, in the Arabic, being finished, in the Hebrew, in any Semitic language, being finished means that you have gotten to a stopping point, but the process continues. And the continuation of that process means that you will continue it as did Jesus. Why? Because your desire is to be one with the Father, as was Jesus. Meaning that when he said, I and the Father are one, he's not saying that the man out there, the God out there came to me. No, he said we are one together, meaning that you can see a room differently than you see me, but we are together. Why? Because when you look at the creation of man, woman, what do you see? You see Elohim and Yahweh creating, bringing into existence these created beings by virtue of gathering the dust of the earth, by virtue of gathering the scattered thoughts.
Hello?
Are you still there?
Pastor, are you still there?
Did we lose him? Might have lost him.
Let me text him.
Pastor Ron, are you speaking?
No, I just tried to text him. You know what? I forgot. He's having some problems with his cell phone, so he may not get my text. Hopefully he did though, because he texted me earlier this morning. But I know he's having some problems.
Okay.
I guess why he's gone. I'm not going to ask if you have any questions, but there was a question that I had that maybe one of you guys can elaborate on. The difference between what he called resurrection and what Lazarus went through. I'm not sure I got that. Not quite sure. Let's see that.
I think I
back,
can.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I want to let you know that.
Okay. I had just asked a question, and Nick was gonna try to answer from while you were out. I was saying I want to make sure I understood the difference between Lazarus' resurrection and what you explained that we are going through. So that's where we were.
Okay. Nick, you want to do that? You want to continue with that, or you want me to go ahead and do it?
Sure. No, I'll add what I wanted to. So when it is said that you must create yourself, that is metaphysically and spiritually sort of accurate representation of what is actually happening. And it is the same thing with what we would call miraculous healing and things like that. It is the true nature of your own self essentially healing, balancing, and recreating its own self in its own image, which is the image of the creator, which is the image of the human, but not the physical human, rather the spiritual blueprint of what it is that becomes human. So when we are able to heal or do other quote unquote miraculous things, what we are actually doing is reminding the one who's being healed of their ability to recreate, to heal themselves by connecting with them at a very deep or very high spiritual level, and essentially communing with them at that level of the true nature of self, because it is in this context of illusion of the material experience that we forget that we have the ability to do these things. And it is when we are shown or reminded at a very deep spiritual, psychological, emotional, etc., all of the points on that spectrum at that level, that we can realize that we have the ability to do these things. So that's not to say that we cannot heal, quote unquote, someone else, but it is to say that ultimately the true healing balance comes from the nature of the self recognizing what it is and what it has the ability to do. And that is the true sort of intention of the master healer, for lack of a better term, maybe. It is simply showing you what it is you have forgotten and showing you the blueprint of the self that you are, that you can then engage those aspects of the self that we no longer realized we have or are. Thank you.
Thank you. Along the same line is the idea of Jesus saying, creation, in other creation, recreate yourself, or saying, be recreated. That is indicative of something that was said on Monday night. That is, I think it was Monday anyway, we are not co-creators. We are creators. Jesus did not say, let's co-create. Jesus did not say, you're a co-creator, so with a room, bring yourself back to life. He didn't say that. So that in itself speaks to that, shows us that. The Lazarus incident, as I was saying, was two different words. QAM was translated as resurrect in the case of Lazarus. I can't remember the one in the case of Jesus. But in the case of Lazarus, that word simply means stand up or stand yourself up. That's what it means. In the case of Jesus, it's talking about taking a pause in your life. Why would you need to take a pause in your life? The pause in your life is the opportunity for you to recreate the essence of who you are. And the way you recreate who you are, or the way you create who you want to be, is by understanding the wisdom. And the reason wisdom is feminine is because you cannot be recreated, or you cannot recreate, rather, if you don't have the wisdom to do it, if you don't understand the wisdom involved in doing it, if you don't understand that out of the womb of wisdom, understanding is birthed, so that you are able to create yourself, bring yourself to the creative state that you were brought into this world to be. And that pause is allowing that understanding, or giving you the space for that understanding to take place. And that's the reason a lot of times we say stuff that we have never studied, but we know is true. And we can relate it to other passages in the scriptures without even looking at those passages, because wisdom is giving birth to understanding on a continuous basis. When that happens, what you begin to do, we don't pray without ceasing, like we think about prayer. We live in a meditative state, meaning that you have presented yourself to be open to anything, anytime, any place that the womb of wisdom seeks to birth within you. And the difference also is that when Jesus walked through those walls, another message in that is nothing can stop you. There are no barriers that can stop you. no matter how many fortifications are erected within the confines of religion, none of them will be able to hamper you, to stop you from being who you were created to be. There is no difference than being who you were created to be. There's no difference in that and being on this line raising questions and having responses to questions that resonate with you. What that means is you are creating yourself by virtue of obedience, and you are being brought into a rhythm with the universe in such a manner that each time you go through something and you deal with it in the way that you have been taught to deal with it, that rhythm holds longer for you than it did prior to. When someone cuts you off in traffic and you feel that tinge of anger or whatever you say, then you recall that by virtue of recreating you. You have to let that person be. You have to forgive the rudeness of the person and forgive yourself for being out of rhythm. And that's what keeps you in rhythm. And the day comes when someone cuts you off and it doesn't bother you, it doesn't faze you. You just slow down and let them in. And at that point, you're beginning to see that you are in rhythm more often, a longer period than you were in the beginning, because your attitude is changing. That in itself is the creation that that Jesus is speaking about when he talks about Lazarus standing himself up. When he tells him that, but when Jesus talks about I am the resurrection life, as I said earlier, that's the mirror. When Jesus is resurrected, that means that, again, Jesus saw clearly what it was supposed to be, and that is a spiritual being in this earth that's unstoppable. He had no interactive challenges with people. He did not have it. In other words, he had no smart words to say to people, as he did at times when he was in the earth as before the resurrection. So when he tells Philip when he says to Philip, have I been so long with you, and you have not known who I am? All he's saying is, as long as I've been with you, you mean to tell me you haven't seen the Father yet? That's all he's saying. So with that, I will stop and see if there are questions.
I have a question. This is Audrey. So basically, you're saying that our responsibility is allow the Christ to be resurrected in us, so that we are able to let the guy cut in if he needs to cut in, without feeling any kind of anger or remorse or anything like that. So,
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
And on an everyday basis, we allow the Christ to be resurrected in us.
Yes. And I want to reiterate this. The Christ that's resurrected in us is not a man. It is the energy force, the life energy that Jesus shared, the life energy that Lazarus employed to stand himself up. That's the same life energy that must be employed when someone cuts us off. Because think about this, regardless of what you are doing, if you are doing it based on being in rhythm with the universe, all of it is energy. And there are no differentiations in energy. The only thing that you can differentiate with energy is how you use it, whether you're using it to turn on a light or whether you're using it to keep your heart beating. Energy is energy.
So being transformed by the renewing of our minds is to let that Christ energy influence us and take over when we have whatever going on in our lives.
Actually, Audrey, that life, our responsibility is not so much to reach out and get it as it is to be totally submissive to it so we can become it. And that gives us the opportunity to say what Jesus said. I am the resurrection. I am the life. And keeping in mind that am is not in the Semitic language at all. Jesus is simply saying what we are doing, rather, when that resurrection continues within us, we become that resurrection. We become the life of humanity. We become that source that when people simply believe in us or believe in what we are doing, understand that there is no death. You're dead now. However, you can come out of that room of death into the room of life. Just walk through this door. And walking through the door means embracing what's resonating deeply inside of you. And when you do that, you have, in essence, revived yourself. You have, in essence, come alive. For example, when a leaf falls from the tree, that leaf dies. It actually goes through a doorway, and that doorway that it goes through is the winter. The fall, when it falls from the tree, the winter, it goes through that, and then in the spring and summer of his life, it begins to recreate itself. And we call it being fertilizer for the tree, but it is actually recreating itself because it is not truly separate from that tree. The energy of that tree is in the seed, it's in the fertilizer. You can take an acorn from where I live in Santa, and you can take it to upstate New York, and it still will grow an oak tree because of the connectivity or the oneness of the energy that makes it what it is. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Now, that is the danger in splicing genes to create plants, to create food. Like one of the companies has done, created a corn that does not reproduce. You have to buy it from them in order for the seed to reproduce. It loses its nutritional value if there ever is any. It loses its nutritional value, and they know this, and that is the reason you cannot export that corn to other nations around the world because they don't want it, because it makes them dependent on you, and you have spliced the gene, and it is a facsimile of a kernel of corn. It is not really corn. It simply looks like corn, and it does not do the things that corn does in relationship to you ingesting it. That's how resurrection is ended. Daniel, what is it? I almost called the name of the company. But what they did with that gene is what religion does to us. It prevents resurrection. It keeps us in the room of death. We are, and the reason I say that, knowing that death is a doorway to life, the reason I say that is because We are always on the precipice of passing from this death into life. We are always at a place when all we have to do is cross that door sill, and we will be in that place of life, beginning the course of resurrection. And when Jesus said, I will raise it in 3 days, what Jesus is saying is, I will be resurrected in 3 days. He's saying that I am Elohim. I am Ruach. I am human. Everything that's spiritual, that's what I am. That 3 days represents that, the divine essence. And he's saying is, I will resurrect myself. The angels at the tomb that rolled the stone away, that's a message saying all those things that are blocking you from living the life of resurrection are removed by the messages that you receive from the womb of wisdom. And those messages come to you directly, or they can be brought to you by those who are committed to speaking what they see the Father say, speaking what comes from the womb of wisdom. Is that clear? Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Can I just extend your analogy a little bit?
Yes,
No,
go ahead.
well, I know. I know what company you're talking about because they're trying to come into Mexico. And Mexico has like 50 or 60 species of corn. And they're trying to lobby the Mexican government so that Mexico buys their corn. And yeah, it's that same corn you're talking about where each year you have to come back to the company to buy the seed. So it's kind of equivalent to what the white nationalist evangelical church is doing. They want to take away all the species of people looking for their way to the Christ and try to make it into what they want it. And in effect, yeah, they're taking away the resurrection. Anyway, so I see that is very similar.
Thank you. And these are the kind of parables that Jesus spoke to the people. They understood it because they were processing with a Semitic mind. Some of them didn't understand it because they were so steeped in religion. So Jesus saying that showing us rather the picture. The soldiers who was guarding the tomb, they fell out. They were unconscious. They were asleep. What does that mean? The authorities that has been guarding you, that's been lording their power over you, you don't have to do anything to be freed from that other than embrace who you are, knowing that you're being resurrected, and those authorities that are guarding you will fall away from you just like chains will fall away from you and free you. All of this is in that resurrection story. And the womb is the first thing that comes to that tomb. Why? Because it's saying that the womb of wisdom shows up so that you can be infused with the understanding that you have never had. The unconscious state of Jesus, the death of Jesus, speaks loudly through that doorway. and to the understanding that you are entering a continuation of life, which is resurrection. Thank you.
Pastor, say that one more time. What are you calling the womb? You're saying the tomb and the womb are one, or say
No.
that one more time for
See, the tomb that Jesus was in is the womb of earth consciousness.
Okay.
It's the womb that tells you, I control you. It's the womb that says, of religion saying that we are going to excommunicate you. We have the power to kill you if we want to. We have the power to take your life. Keep in mind, it was religious folk who presented Jesus to be executed. It was the church who executed Jesus. And and put him in that tomb that supposed to be a passageway to spiritual life. They saw it as an enclosure that was going to stop him from spreading the word of truth. And by being resurrected, by telling the story the way it's told, what we are being told is nothing can keep you in that womb of religion, because the womb of religion is death. And that message that removes the enclosure or that I don't know I can't remember the right term for that plug that a woman releases when her water breaks. That stone is the removal of that. That stone, you can't move it with your hands. You have to move it with your understanding and acceptance of wisdom. And you begin to see clearly, without any equivocation, that there is no difference in you and the one that created you. Image and likeness is who you are. It's what you are. And embracing that truth brings you to that resurrected life, and nothing can bound you again. There was no way that Jesus could have been captured again, because Jesus was unseen to them. They didn't pay him any attention. They put foundation and graded faith on a list of people who are not to be dealt with, because they are outside the parameters of the church, and that's why they couldn't see him. You can't be seen, meaning that they don't understand you. They don't see what you see because they don't want to. They can see your body, but they can't see your heart, and they don't want to see it. They know that you are a quote-unquote good person, but they don't realize what they're saying. You're a right person. So and when Jesus was a little boy, it's saying that even when you are young and you have a deep desire to see the truth, to travel this journey of wisdom, even when you are expressive of it in your tender age, and this has nothing to do with a boy being tender age, it has everything to do with your spiritual awareness. When you are a spiritual child, regardless of chronological age, when you are a spiritual child and you speak the truth, they are going to try to destroy you, but I will protect you. And that is the reason Jesus was able to move through the crowd. That's what the story is about, moving through that crowd without anyone seeing him, so they could do him no harm. So in Columbia, we're in a house. My examples are, in Gaffney, we were in a building, a cave, now we are in a different structure. We're not in a structure that receives the energy of Catholicism or Christianity because we don't have a steeple and don't want one. So we are not under that authority. So the movement through the crowd, with them not being able to see him, is saying that you're able to travel the journey of truth, and no one will pay you any attention. When you begin to mature in it, then everyone will pay you some attention because you become a threat to them. And the maturity of it was seen when we taught 99% of the stuff in the association. All of a sudden, it came to an abrupt halt because it became a threat to a desire to remain ignorant of what spirituality really is. And
Can I back you up a second, please? I want to go back to the tomb. It seemed very important because it was documented in several of the Gospels, right? That tomb belonged to a righteous man who asked for the body. What's the significance of that? He was a believer, so he was a part of the council, which I don't know if that meant the government or the church, but he was a righteous man who believed, and that was his tomb that he was laid in. Just plug that in if you don't mind, please.
Nicodemus was a man who wanted to be expressive of his righteousness, and he struggled between following Jesus because he knew it was right and remaining in that place of authority that he had in the hierarchy of the church or of the Sanhedrin Council, which is a religious authority.
This was a man named Joseph something.
You know what? I'm hearing that Joseph, but I'm seeing Nicodemus in the 3rd chapter, right?
Yeah.
The Joseph of Arimathea, that's who it was. When Joseph was a wealthy man, very wealthy, who had influence in the church or the synagogue, and he had quietly followed Jesus while at the same time remaining a part of the religious body of that day. So what Jesus is saying is that I have sheep that are not of this pasture. And what Jesus is saying, the sheep who are not of this pasture don't necessarily look like you. Now, was Joseph of Arimathea straddling the fence? Yes, he was. Just like some people on this phone, just like people in this world are straddling the fence. They want to play both sides just in case one side is wrong. The side they grew up with, they want to hold on to it because they're not quite sure about this other thing, because this other thing doesn't provide you a burial plot. It doesn't provide you a place to have your funeral. So what that means is that those who are holding on to that are preoccupied with death, not life. So when he gave up his tomb for Jesus, what he was actually doing at that point was putting Jesus in a place of death because he thought he was doing the right thing. He was giving him a place to be buried, not realizing that this is going to be your place of burial because I'm not staying here. Was he righteous? He performed righteous acts. He was not the unripened person, totally unripened person. He was in the process of being ripened when he did that with Jesus. I have to read again to understand what happened to him after that, because by virtue of him being named Joseph, that carries us also back to Joseph, whose brothers were about him, the coat of many colors, right? That didn't mean that he was going to lord over them. It meant that they were going to see who he is. And the same thing with this Joseph, seeing who he really is. Maybe that is shown by virtue of what he did out of ignorance, thinking that Jesus was going to be in that grave just like everyone else. Does that make sense, Ron?
Yeah, you also mentioned that the tomb represents the womb of Earth's consciousness. So that is saying that
religious consciousness, earth consciousness, yes, but the religion of that earth consciousness.
Okay.
Let me tell you what the difference is. The religion of earth consciousness is the primary manipulator to keep people in check in the earth so they can be controlled. The earth consciousness, separate from religion, is doing the same thing, but in a different way. The earth consciousness that's separated from religion is controlled by the government, and the government is controlled by religion. So it is through the government that this happens. Whatever the evangelicals want, they get. It's been like that since the inception of this country. Whatever they want, they get. The enslavers has always maintained control of this country. So what I'm saying is that the consciousness is divided. So when Jesus was in the womb of earth consciousness, it was religion who put him in that womb and sought to hold him in that womb. The government, the church went through the government to kill Jesus. The church had the government to assassinate Jesus. The church, Judaism, assassinates who it chooses to. Trump can say anything he wants about Jews, they don't bother him. Kanye West says something about Jews that Trump has said, and they try to make him a poor man in terms of taking everything he has because they control it. That's how earth consciousness works. They work hand in hand with each other. And that womb of religious earth consciousness is no different than the grave. But this is an allegory that's telling us to what extent religion will go in order to stop us. If we can't stop you ourselves, we will have you executed by the government. What does that look like now? Execution by the government is bringing you to the attention of the Internal Revenue Service and them taking everything you have. Assassinated by the government is using the news media to talk about how anti-Semitic someone is, not realizing that we are the Semites, not them. That's how the religion uses the government to do that. Now, keep in mind, when we talk about religion, we're not only talking about Christianity. We are talking about Islam and Judaism, all the rest of them. All of them function the same way, but their approach to the same end is different. help run.
Yes, sir. I have another question, but I want to see if anybody else has any question on this one. I'm gonna take you somewhere else, and then I'll hush it. Are there any other questions on this subject, y'all? Anybody? You alluded to something, and I want to go back to it and make sure I see it. It seemed to be important that the first ones to see him were the women. Why was that significant? After the resurrection, that is.
The significance of that goes all the way back to Jesus' life, when at age 33 he began to, I think it's 33, he began to preach. It goes back to that period. Again, these are allegories that tell the spiritual truth. How did Jesus interact with women? Let the one of you who has not been entangled in anything cast the first stone. They turn and walk away. You find it very easy to manipulate, control, and condemn feminine energy, or the female, which is representative of that. You find that very easy. You don't look at your own entanglements. You don't see that one of your major entanglements is how you denigrate women, how you use this thing of adultery to stone a woman to death. Yet, there's no mention of a man being stoned to death for the same reason. Look at the woman at the well. What does he say? You've had, bring your husband, rather, is what happens. And what does he say? You've had 5 husbands, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the one you are with is not your husband. What he's saying is, you have been under the authority of 5 different entities, whether it be a husband through marriage, or whether it be your father, or whether it be someone who bought you, or whether it be someone who just dominates you. You have had 5 authorities over you. And it appears that these 5 authorities were there for you, but they were there to glorify themselves through you. They used you. And the one you with now, number 6, is still not showing you who you are. The 6 is the number of man, the earthly man. The 7th man in her life is Jesus. I will give you water so that you will not thirst anymore. Jesus is saying, I will give you spiritual energy, or the life energy that will sustain you through anything. So the 7th is take your time to hear what I am saying. Sabbath. Take your time to hear what I'm saying. Dispense with everything that's within you. And what you will see is yourself. You will see that you are not what you have been condemned to be. You will see that you're coming to this well in the heat of the day, because you don't want to be ridiculed by the others who come to this well. What you have done this day, this time, through that sacrifice of searching, you have met life. I am the life energy The water I give you is life energy. In other words, the esteem that you were created to have within you, I am offering it to you. And I don't need a bucket to draw from the well. I am the well. These are his interactions, even though he was not supposed to talk to her because she was not related to him. And we move on and see how they interacted, how Jesus rather interacted with him, is telling us how males were so far off base in the way they treated women until it caused the reality of spirituality to dry up and to become non-effective and cause people to have a continuous thirst but not knowing what that thirst represents. Now, here we are at this tomb. What happened? The moment that the powers of earth consciousness, religious and governmental earth consciousness, the moment that those chains were broken, that feminine energy, that woman comes to the tomb. And when she comes to the tomb, she recognizes who he is immediately. And that is saying that when the righteous man seeks to open the eyes of the unrighteousness, they are put to death. When you resurrect, you become one with feminine energy. You see it differently. You begin to see that there is no separation between you and that woman, the male and the female. No separation. There is no such thing as rulership in the household, being the male. We are one. Without knowing that you are one or being one, you could not bring a life into this earth. So when they met, when she was at that tomb, it represented the new life that was being birthed into the earth, a life that the earth had forgotten or never known. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And this never could have happened if your experience with females are negative. If you denigrate them, if you see them as being inferior to you and treat them like that, if you try to control, manipulate them with what you give them, or by lying to them, you are not able to do this. And Jesus showed throughout how interaction between masculine and feminine is supposed to be. And he showed us how to correct the wrongs with the stoning thing. Any other questions or comments?
I just see a correlation, I guess is the word, between the true essence of feminine energy and the African. But in a lot of ways, they're treated the same. One is used and beaten down by the church, and the other one gets the same treatment by the world, and all of it is religion.
Well, when we talk about the allegory of the tomb, we are talking about Africans. When we talk about the dehumanizing of the woman, we are talking about Africans. And that was perpetuated by religion, by Africans. Why? Because after the Greeks were thrown out, the Romans came in, and the Romans dispensed with all of the priests who were administering to the people. And with that, they appointed who wanted to benefit from their position. And the Romans said, your responsibility is to make sure that no revolt takes place. Keep them in their place. So these African priests, these African preachers were given an authority by the Romans, by the government, to keep them in their place. And they followed suit. So a woman can prepare the communion, but she can't serve. A woman can be place the plate on the table in the Catholic Church, but she can't serve it. She can't be a priest. All of these things that we see are wrapped up in this allegory. It's telling us a spiritual truth. This is the way things are. They've gone off the rails. And now, here we are. Jesus says, it is finished. Meaning a continuation. So the continuation took place when he and the female in this allegory came face to face. His resurrected life showed him the true essence of femininity. And the greater things than these ye shall do came into place with a strength and power that no one or nothing could alter, destroy it, or resist it if they sought it. Here we are, seeking to understand the wisdom of the book. And in seeking to understand that, what we are actually doing is seeking the greater things. What are these greater things? And what are these greater things are not necessarily things that can be enumerated by what we see with our physical eyes. Mind you, not necessarily. What we see with our eyes is a manifestation of spiritual truth. Whether it be a lynching, that's a manifestation of a spiritual truth. The spiritual truth is that those who are doing the lynching are out of rhythm with the universe. And fighting them physically does not stop it because another one will take its place. But understanding the essence, spiritual essence of all of it began to change a stony heart to a heart that can be pierced by the truth. That doesn't happen. You can't do that if you don't embrace the true essence of femininity. Does that help you, Ron? Can you see it?
Yeah, I can. Thank you.
Welcome. If there are questions or comments, but then if not, questions, no comments.
Well, seems like a good place to pause anyway. It's just about almost noon.
Okay.
No question, comments. Yeah, well,
Okay,
take a pause. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was saying we good. Tomorrow is the first Sunday through the facilitators. We are on with California tomorrow. But if there are questions that you could not formulate, please write them down anyway, just so you can remember, or just talk your question out. Because I don't think that we have really seen the depth of what took place with that woman at the well. Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you. Hope everybody have a great day and see you tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Good day, everybody.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you,
Bye,
everyone.
everybody.